Once upon a time, in the city of Port Harcourt, lived a young man whose name was Ebon. Ebon was an extremely handsome man who strived to be rich. He was a talented fashion designer who sold outfits for women and owned a small tailoring shop at the corner of a very popular street. His girlfriend Summer was currently doing her youth service in Port Harcourt. She was a quiet and loving young woman who met Ebon at a friend's birthday party. They got talking and soon became inseparable. For 8 months, Summer made Ebon the center of her world. She would visit his shop every day, cook for him, and watch him sew as they discussed. She was always supportive of him as she helped him clean, modeled his clothes, and even gave him half the money she was being paid by the government. Summer believed so much in Ebon's dreams, more than he even did. She wore the clothes that he made and told everyone that cared to listen that he made them, and so many customers came to his shop because of her. Summer was one woman that any man would want in his corner, and Ebon could not doubt this reality. One day, he found himself overwhelmed by frustration. Rent was due, customers were scarce, and the money he had was barely enough to eat. So when Summer walked into the shop and found him with his head in his hands, she rushed to his side. "Talk to me," she said gently, kneeling beside him as she asked what the problem was. Ebon explained everything: the rent, the pressure, the fear that he would never make it in life, and Summer rebuked him for saying such a thing. Ebon was tired of living a life of poverty. His landlord was demanding for his rent, and he had no single money saved up for it. Summer could not stand his tears. She decided to approach the landlord to plead with him for more time, but the landlord made a proposal to her that shocked her to the bones. He proposed that if Summer spent a night with him, he would write off the debt and allow Ebon live in the house free for 1 whole year. Summer felt so humiliated. She walked out on him angrily as she approached Ebon to report what had just happened, but Ebon yelled out angrily at her and asked why she did not accept to sleep with him. "It's only one night, Summer. How hard could it be to open your legs and let him in?" he asked her, as she looked at him stunned to hear such a thing from his mouth. "How can you ask me, your girlfriend, to sleep with your landlord?" she asked Ebon, who told her if the tables were turned, he would do anything to see that she never suffers. "Just sleep with him, Summer. It's only one night," he said as he walked out angrily on her, leaving her in her own thoughts. Summer returned home that evening in tears. She could not believe that Ebon would make such a ridiculous suggestion to her. She sat there, her eyes filled with tears, when an idea suddenly crossed her mind. "He can come live with me," she thought as she called up his phone, but Ebon was not having it. "How dare you expect me to move into that small room of yours?" he said to Summer as he hung up the phone angrily, leaving her there in tears. For all these months, Summer had never seen Ebon act in such a way. She felt so terrible for not agreeing to his demands and wished there was something more that she could do. In that moment, her phone rang and Summer rolled her eyes and ignored the call. It was Yuna, a young man who she met on her way back home one evening. He was such a handsome and rich man, but Summer was not interested in him. She loved Ebon so much and could not imagine herself with any other man. Summer sat there staring at her phone as Yuna called and called. She then thought of an idea and picked up the phone, feigning distress as Yuna panicked in worry. "What's the problem?" he asked Summer, who told him that she needed some money. Without thinking twice, Yuna agreed to give her the money. He sent the money to her account, and Summer, filled with so much excitement, rushed to withdraw the money to give to Ebon at his shop. She arrived at the shop and met Ebon flirting with another beautiful woman. Her name was Priye, and she was not only beautiful but rich. Summer could not stand the sight of Ebon with another woman. She approached them angrily to know what was really going on, but Ebon smirked and placed his arm around the woman's waist. "Oh, Summer," he said sarcastically, "can't you see I'm busy? How dare you barge into my shop like you own the place?" The rich woman Priye let out a mocking laughter as she looked at Summer from head to toe. Summer stood there sad and hurt as she picked up the envelope of cash that she had gone through hell to get for him. Ebon ignored her completely as he held the rich woman in his arms and gave her a kiss in front of Summer, professing his undying love for her. Summer, unable to withstand the betrayal, ran out of his shop broken as she cried. She arrived home and locked herself up in her room, her mind replaying the scene over and over again. Summer could not believe what had happened. She could not understand how Ebon would do this to her after all the things that she did for him. She laid on her bed, heartbroken, as she dialed his number repeatedly, but Ebon did not pick up. Instead, he blocked her number, making it impossible for Summer to reach him on the phone. Summer cried all night, her pillow soaked with tears. She remembered how Ebon once held her hand in his shop and made promises to her. It was on one rainy evening when the entire neighborhood had lost power. The sound of generators could be heard as Ebon sat across from her and began to speak. Summer, he said, his voice low and sure, I may not have much now, but one day, when I make it, I'll marry you. I'll sew your wedding gown with my own hands, and it will be the most beautiful dress the world has ever seen. Summer's heart fluttered as she laughed and teased his sewing skills. Ebon laughed too as he pulled her close and promised to perfect his sewing. They both kissed under the glow of the lantern, both unaware that those simple nights would become the most precious memories she'll carry when everything else fell apart. Now, in the silence of her small room, Summer buried her face in her pillow as Ebon's betrayal cut deep. She could not believe that Ebon would ever do such a thing to her. When morning came, she decided to pay him a visit. Despite her pain, a part of her still wanted answers. She convinced herself that if she could just speak to Ebon one more time, face to face, he would explain everything and maybe apologize. So that morning, with swollen eyes and trembling hands, Summer left her house to his apartment. She arrived a few minutes later and knocked gently on the door. Ebon opened the door after several knocks. Standing next to him was the same woman Priye, who was now dressed in a short silk robe. She stood next to him and asked Summer what she was doing there by that time of the morning, and Summer could not hold back her tears. She turned to Ebon and pleaded for them to talk, and Ebon looked at her as though she were a stranger. Talk about what exactly? He said mockingly. I told you it was over. You really shouldn't be here, Summer, he said as Summer handed him the envelope of money, hoping that he would see her sacrifice and change his mind. But Ebon laughed her in the face and said something that Summer did not see coming. Whilst you are there spreading your legs to make this money, my darling here was signing over the papers of this house. She bought the house for me, Summer, something you can only dream of. You are beneath me. The earlier you understand that, the better for you, he said as his girlfriend Priye scoffed and stepped forward to meet Summer. Without any form of warning, she lunged forward and gave Summer a very hot slap across the face. I don't know who you think you are, she snapped as she continued to speak. But people like you don't belong here. Your entire generation is not worthy to lick my feet. Talk more of standing next to me. So, the next time I see you around my man, I'll make sure that I teach you a lesson that you will never forget, she said as they both walked into the house, leaving Summer humiliated. Tears streamed down her face as she turned and ran down the stairs in pain. She staggered into the street, heart pounding, as shame burned through her chest. Summer stood downstairs as Priye threw down her items from Ebon's house. Devastated, she packed all the items and began to head home. The sky had begun to drizzle, as if the heavens were now mourning with her. Summer stood by the roadside, trying to wave down a cab, when a black car pulled over beside her and called her name. The window rolled down, and it was Yuna, the rich handsome man who loved her so much and was willing to do anything for her. Summer, my God, what happened to you? Get in the car, he said quickly as he unlocked the door. Summer hesitated but obeyed. Immediately she sat in the car. She burst into tears. Through gasps and sobs, she told Yuna everything, how she loved Ebon and sacrificed everything for him. Yet, Ebon chose another woman over her. Yuna gripped the steering wheel tightly as he listened to her. The pain in his chest was real, not just for Summer's suffering, but because he had watched her love a man who did not deserve even her shadow. Summer, he said gently, reaching for her hand. You did everything right. He didn't deserve you, and what he did today was not your fault, so don't beat yourself up for his cruelty. Summer sniffed and looked away, her eyes clouded with tears. But let me tell you this, Yuna added firmly. One day, he'll regret losing you, and when he does, I hope he never finds you again. He said to Summer, who he dropped at home, promising to check in on her much later. Summer walked into her house and shut the door. She felt so angry at Ebon, but despite this, she still loved him deeply and didn't know how to live without him. Ebon, on the other hand, was having the time of his life. His rich girlfriend Priye changed his life completely and even upgraded his business. Ebon was now living the life of his dreams, driving a car that cost millions that was bought for him by his girlfriend. He flaunted his new lifestyle on social media, designer clothes, expensive champagne and even cars. Ebon now rode with the big boys in town. His girlfriend Priye spared no expense when it came to him. One day, she returned home and informed Ebon that they had a party to attend in Lagos. It was so sudden, but Ebon had no other option but to go. They arrived at the airport and Ebon bumped into Summer, who was also on her way to Lagos. It was such an awkward trip for Summer, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. Ebon, on the other hand, felt a strange twist in his chest as he thought to himself. His ex-girlfriend Summer looked different, stronger, brighter and even happier. However, Ebon consoled himself with the fact that Priye gave him a life that Summer could never afford. They sat on different parts of the plane, and when they finally landed, a car was waiting for them at the airport. Ebon and his girlfriend Priye got into the car to their destination. Ebon had never been to Lagos before. He was so delighted to finally be here, and Priye took him to their apartment to change for the party. Hours later, they were all dressed and headed straight for the party, full of politicians, oil tycoons and people that he never dreamed of meeting. Days passed, and they were set to return back to Port Harcourt when Priye informed him of an emergency meeting that she had to attend. Ebon had to return back to Port Harcourt alone as he had some important appointments with some of his customers. He arrived at his fashion house and was confronted by a group of uniformed men who revealed to him that his attention was needed at the station. Ebon was arrested for money laundering. All the while, he never knew that his girlfriend Priye was using his business to launder drug money. Priye had carefully hidden everything from Ebon. She had registered multiple companies in his name, used his fashion house to move suspicious funds, and routed large transfers through accounts he had unknowingly signed off on. The small boutique Summer once helped him clean had grown into a luxurious showroom overnight, not through fashion sales, but through blood money. And Ebon, blinded by soft kisses, champagne and a lifestyle he did not build, never for once asked any question. At the station, Ebon was handed stacks of documents with his signature, bank statements, fraudulent invoices, drug cartel links. It felt like a movie. I don't understand, he whispered, his voice barely audible. This has to be a mistake. But the officers had seen it too many times. Scapegoats, dressed in Versace, pretty boys turned paper fronts. Where is Priye? He asked the officer, who informed him that Priye vanished the moment he boarded the flight back from Lagos. Her passport was gone, her phone's dead, and her house cleared out. Ebon sat there in stunned silence, humiliated and completely broken. Everything he once boasted of, his car, his clothes, his so-called friends, none of it was real. He had nothing to his name but handcuffs and money laundering charges. Ebon had no way to prove that he was innocent. The documents all had his signature, and Ebon, despite all his explanations, could not convince the officers of his innocence. He was sent to jail, and all the luxuries that he enjoyed were all taken away from him, leaving him with nothing. Ebon did not know what to do. He had no one to turn to, as all his rich friends blocked his number and denied ever knowing him. Ebon regretted all his actions and wished that he never left Summer for Priye. But wishes don't rewrite the past. They don't unbreak hearts and unblock prison bars. In the cold prison cell, Ebon laid on a tin mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. Every face that passed him in his mind, his landlord, his customers, the friends who once hailed him, as well as Priye's fake smile, faded away until one face remained. Summer, the only person who had loved him for who he was, the one who stood by him when he had nothing, the woman he mocked, humiliated, and cast aside for a woman who destroyed his life. He remembered her laughter when she used to bring food to the shop, the tears in her eyes when he said, "Just sleep with him, Summer. It's only one night." A tear escaped from the corner of his eye as he bit his lip to stop the sob from rising from his throat. He was alone, and that was his true punishment. Ebon decided to reach out to her. He found a phone and called her from prison, hoping that she would pick, but the number was now disconnected. All his hopes were shattered as Ebon wasted away in prison. Months passed, and all efforts to reach Summer proved abortive, so Ebon accepted his fate and did all he could to survive in jail. 2 years later, something that he never expected happened. Priye was finally apprehended by the police. His case was reopened, and Ebon was finally declared innocent. It was proven that Priye had been the mastermind behind an international money laundering syndicate. Dozens of identities, including Ebon's, had been used as pawns. With new evidence and a confession from one of her accomplices, Ebon's name was cleared, but his freedom came at a cost. By the time Ebon stepped out of prison, he had lost everything: his business, his reputation, and his place in Port Harcourt society. His once handsome face had grown gaunt, his eyes carried the weight of betrayal, and his heart, though free from chains, bore invisible scars. He had no money, no friends, no home. So, with nowhere else to go, Ebon quietly packed what little he had and returned to his village. His mother, old and frail, wept the moment she saw him. "My son," she said through tears, "you left the village as a man who went to chase wealth and came back with nothing but pain." Ebon said nothing. He simply bowed his head. For days, he barely left the compound. Villagers whispered as they passed by. The once promising fashion designer from Port Harcourt now lived in the village with no hope of ever making it. But nothing could have prepared him for what he would later see. One afternoon, one of his rich uncles returned to the country and decided to stop by the village, and Ebon decided to pay him a visit. He arrived at his house and saw something that he never expected. A souvenir bag sat in the corner of his uncle's house with an image of Summer and another man. They were now married, and Ebon could not believe his eyes. He stood there in pain as he asked his uncle how he knew Summer, and his uncle smiled and narrated to him that Summer was the daughter of the Enugu state governor. Her family was extremely wealthy, and the man that she ended up marrying, Yuna, was his uncle's friend's son. Ebon's hands trembled as he held the souvenir bag, staring at the beautifully printed photo of Summer and Yuna, radiant in their traditional wedding attire. Summer was glowing, her eyes filled with peace. They looked like royalty, and in truth they were. His uncle continued, completely unaware of the storm that was now raging in Ebon's chest. Summer is such a humble girl. Can you imagine? Despite being a governor's daughter, she lived like an ordinary copper through her service here. Refused to accept any allowances from home. Very principled. You know, the kind of girl you thank God for when she enters your life. Ebon swallowed hard, his throat dry. How did she end up with Yuna? He asked his uncle, who chuckled. Yuna was there when that girl was at her lowest. You know they say real men show up when the crowd walks away. She thought the guy she was dating would marry her, but he dumped her for another woman. That break nearly destroyed her. But Yuna, he waited. And now look at them, happily married. She's even running a charity foundation now, helping young women and single mothers. Ebon could not speak. His mouth hung open slightly, but no words came out. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible fist. The girl, who he once told to sleep with his landlord, the same girl whose tiny room he insulted, the same girl he mocked in front of another woman. She was not only from a powerful and wealthy family, she was married into one too, respected, adored, and celebrated. And here he was, broke, nameless, and forgotten. No job, no friends, no legacy. Ebun, in that moment, wished that he made better choices. He lived the remainder of his life in the village, poor, as he realized that pride was his greatest downfall. Summer, however, lived a happy life with Yuna, who loved and adored everything about her. She thanked God every day for him and never for once looked back with regret. The lesson to be learned from this story is that true love should never be traded for temporary luxury, and humility is a silent power that outshines pride. Abel's downfall was not poverty, it was his arrogance, greed, and failure to recognize value when it stood before him in simplicity. Summer's strength, loyalty, and integrity carried her to greatness, whilst Ebon's thirst for quick success left him with nothing but regret. In life, never despise small beginnings and never betray someone who would have given you the world with bare hands. Because oftentimes, the one you discard today will become the person you can never reach again. I hope you enjoyed the story.